and welcome back. Today I'm talking to Aneesa Muthana, who I've been basically stalking on LinkedIn for about 2 years now to try to get her to this event. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. Aneesa's going to be speaking on main stage tomorrow, but we wanted to have a little conversation with you today and just learn a little bit more about you before we see you on stage tomorrow. Give me a little background. I mean, obviously, you have to have an interesting story. You own a manufacturing company and you're a woman. That alone is pretty significant. How did you get started in all this?
Well, before I can tell you my story, it has to start with my parents. My parents came to the United States from Yemen back in the 60s. My father was a grinder. He was a machinist back in England in the early 60s.
Okay.
Came to the States. A few years later, my mom came. They both were factory workers. My dad was strictly precision machining,
Okay.
where my mom found a job in a machine shop, a screw machine shop, similar to my company today. But back then, you know, she was working in a factory when it was dark, dirty, grimy, not like today's clean, very high-tech shops that we have.
Right.
And you know, when sexual harassment and racism wasn't anything anyone was talking about.
Right.
So she bulldozed through it. She worked in a factory with limited English. So what's my excuse, right? You know, she was really my role model.
She tread the way.
And my dad, you know, because he came and he wanted to be an entrepreneur, he wanted to open up his own shop. He had two jobs. He worked as a machinist during the day, and at night he was the dishwasher, got promoted to busboy. And to be completely honest, you know, I'm 54 years old today. Not today, but
I was
now.
going to say happy birthday.
No,
Okay.
I'm now 54 years old, so I realize the value of what my father did, where maybe when I was younger I didn't.
Yeah.
And so him wanting to own his own business, wanting to do his own thing, and making a sacrifice of working, you know, those hours, and especially in a job like, you know, working, you know, busting tables, cleaning dishes. But he did that, and thankfully he did, because then he did end up opening up his own shop.
Wow.
I was 11 years old because of, you know, legal purposes, and I was a little girl. I was, you know, daddy's little girl. But by age 13, I convinced him to let me. And let me tell you, I caught the bug.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it, and I outdid my brothers, of course, because that was the goal at age 13, is to outdo my brothers.
Of course.
You know, I wanted to prove that I could do it.
Even back then,
Even back then. I think especially back then.
Right.
Now I don't care.
They're not as mean, right?
Well, not even that, but I try not to have to prove myself.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I let the results speak for
I
themselves.
was going to say, you've already proven yourself.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
But then at age 23, in 1993, I left the family business. And I went into partnership with my uncle. And because of the family dynamics, there was, you know, obviously daddy's little girl. And it wasn't just my family. So, you know, there was a lot of, I think, empowerment from my mom and my dad. They never, like, excluded me or made me feel like I couldn't do something.
Right.
On the contrary, you know, I was running machines with my brothers. And I was, you know, working in sales, and I was working in accounting. So every department,
I learned
it from, you know, and it was the bottom. It wasn't like it was functioning. It was like we were figuring out processes before we knew they were processes.
Wow.
We were figuring out, like, what's best practice, you know, 5S. You know, before these acronyms and later in life, like learning, I was learning it, you know, in excellence, really, like quality. Like, my dad was so precise, like very like articulate in what he wanted and his expectations. And so that bar never went down. It was always, he was always raising it, and we raised it together. And so I remember, like, as a little girl, I was in, you know, in the back seat, and a truck would go by with some bars, and we did precision grinding of bar stock. And so anytime we would see that, we didn't have Google. We had a phone book.
I remember. I'm your age. I remember.
and if we were lucky, we were allowed to call 411 because
Right.
it was expensive back then. and they knew exactly who called, you know, and if we ended up using it. So we used the phone book. So I would literally make, you know, sales calls as a teenager. And you know, I would talk to customers, and so I learned every aspect
yeah.
of running the company. So at age 23, you know, I had truck drivers whistling at me. I had, you know, salespeople not taking my word for it. I had, you know, our suppliers, where's your brother? You know, and it was just like, I can't get very far here. Like, this is not how my parents raised me. So I left. I was a single mom. I had no education. I had, you know, basically, and I was just like, I'm gonna find my plan B. I have to do something other than this because I can't live like this. And I did. I ended up leaving. And my uncle was already in my ear. He had already gone into a machine shop of his own that wasn't really competing with my family. It was, so this is the machining, and then my family was grinding.
Okay.
So two different
process,
two different sectors in the machining industry. And so, so when my uncle asked me, I knew my uncle's background was grinding, and I knew the rivalry between him and my dad. I knew his goal was to be bar grinding. So I gave him an option, and I said, if you want me as a partner, you'd have to be my silent partner. And that would eliminate the
family
the family dynamic of him obviously competing with my family, or us competing with my family. But also, I knew back then, and this is 1993, me telling, you know, the employees what to do, they're like, really? Do you really know what you're talking about? Like, they're gonna second guess me.
Sure.
It was a given.
Yeah.
And so him not being there as their go-to allowed me to take that leadership role.
Establish that, okay.
Yeah, and so then you set those boundaries and you understand what needs to get done, and I took the whole load up, and he was my silent partner back in '93, and today's 2024. He remains to be my silent partner, and our relationship, he was a second dad. We used to run machines together in my dad's shop. So you know, there's so much love and respect.
Yeah.
And his, you know, like I always say that he was like my nurturer. Like, he was the one that saw the skill sets, saw the passion, and knew that I would have his back. And he empowered me.
And recognized the ambition that you had, the chutzpah, as they say, to do it.
So I'm extremely thankful to my parents who paved the way. And I'm extremely thankful for my uncle who opened the door
and challenged you.
And challenged me. Yeah. And 31 years later, it's going great at Pioneer. But a couple of years ago, I don't know if you know this part of my story, but a couple of years ago, my dad was ready to retire, and my brothers and my mom came back to me and said, come back. And I'm like, I'd rather
do
not.
my own thing now.
I'd rather not. I'm good over here. And then I thought about it, and to be completely honest, I can't say no to my mom. You know, my belief system is that if your parents are good with you, and obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but overall, if you have your parents' approval, sky's the limit. Like, God will open up every door. And that's how I feel like we're not competing with them, being able to partner up with them and help each other throughout the 30 years.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about my brothers and myself.
Absolutely.
Being able to walk away from the family business and still find success, and also still have that respect and admiration for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so going back to that, I didn't want to sabotage that.
Right.
So the only way that it would work is if they were my silent partners. Just like my uncle.
Okay.
And so, and I'm bringing in my life savings and every resource, plus my blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
There's
so you
no
were a
way.
true partner.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And my mom's like, you mean I get to be like my brother? Like, it's about damn time. So I was like, okay. I'm like, as long as you know what you're signing up for. And she obviously knew like my life and like what I've committed to on the Pioneer side with her brother, with my uncle, and she knew that I would do the same thing for M&M. And now I have both companies under one roof.
You're running two companies, and
my teams are running two companies. My teams are running.
You're a good boss that you're giving them. That's good.
No, it's give credit where credit's due. I put in a lot of hours. I am an unapologetic workaholic. Let's just bring that out there. I love what I do, and I don't mind doing it. You know, obviously I need my breaks, and I'm a big believer, work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
And as the owner, I get to do that. But at the same time, I need to support my team, and I need to be a resource to my team. Otherwise, I'm not a good leader.
Right.
And my team won't be engaged.
Yeah.
And they won't have my back. So it's being smart. And if I want to start on the bottom line, I will lose my team. If I take care of my team, they will watch the bottom line for me.
There you go.
And we all win.
That's your secret to success.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce.
Respect and trust, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you feel your company is different? I mean, there are very few, sadly, hopefully this is going to change, but there are sadly very few leaders, women leaders in manufacturing. What do you think you do differently? How is your company culture differ from the more traditional?
It's about being a good leader. It's not about being a good woman leader, male leader. It's about being a good leader, having empathy, having compassion, and accommodating when necessary. And you know, we could talk about DEI, we could talk about just in general, because it doesn't matter if it's a diversity part of the culture is diverse or not. It matters how you treat your people. That will attract every kind of person, right? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want.
Right.
If you feel like, you know what, if I'm a woman leader and because I'm a woman, I have more empathy for women, then where does that leave my male employees?
Right.
So if
you can't be one-sided like that.
No, you can't. But if I want to be a good leader and I want an engaged team, and knowing what my parents went through, you know, there was a time that we were slow, and I normally, provide overtime to all my employees. And even when we're not that busy, sometimes I don't want to say it's not justified, but sometimes we kind of like, it's part of almost our overhead, not the cost of the product.
Okay.
So it's important that everyone has, that option of overtime. Not everyone wants it, and that's okay too.
Right.
But I know firsthand, hearing my family talk, my parents talk, like when the overtime was cut, when they thought they were going to get laid off. And that resonated with me. And at the time, it was about my parents. But as a leader today, before I start cutting hours, before I look at cutting my costs, I don't start with my people. That's not my go-to. And they know that. And we have these conversations, and they know I have my back. And I hear it all the time, And there are going to be some people that are not going to appreciate it. It's not about people first. It's about the right people first.
Right.
Because you can have bad apples, and you can do everything right.
And they'll still be.
And they'll still be ungrateful, and they'll treat their coworkers badly. And if you're putting them first, then what have you done to you're sabotaging your work culture.
Right.
And in the end of the day, that's more important to me than a specific person, but is watching out for the right people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What advice would you give if you could go back, or if you, let's just say you meet someone here, a young college student, or just a young professional, or even a high schooler?
Yeah.
What would you say to that person that you think would resonate to make them realize that manufacturing is not only a viable career, but an attractive career for women? In some ways, the fact that there aren't as many, I would imagine, could be an advantage. What would you say that would maybe open the eyes up of students and young women to think, yeah, this is a legitimate career possibility for me?
Yeah.
How do you make that?
I think that as makers, we touch lives, every day in different ways. Anything from aerospace to medical. I remember the first time I realized we were making a part to treat cancer patients. When we host students and we tell them that, they light up.
Then it makes sense. It's
makes
context,
sense,
right?
Exactly. And then they, a part for NASA or SpaceX, then they get excited about that.
Sure.
So the industries we serve. So if I'm not going to be a doctor, at this point in my career, I don't think that's going to happen. So the reward of knowing that I'm contributing to an industry, we were making parts for ventilators during COVID. So there's that value and contribution to society that we do every day. And making that connection is so important, and that's part of good leadership, is making sure the guys on the shop floor, the guys and gals that are on the shop floor,
understand the big picture.
They see that, they literally see it on a big monitor. You know, if our customer allows us to share it, when I go to visit a customer or the sales team visits a customer, one of the questions are, you know, what applications, and if there's a photo of it on their website, we share it. If there's a photo of it in our visit, we take a photo and we share it with the team. And I feel like that opens up their eyes.
Yeah.
And I also feel like as leaders in this industry, it's our responsibility to be hosting students.
Yes.
To, you know, the stigma that's out there is kind of our fault as well. You know, because it was dark, dirty, grimy.
Yeah, and keeping the doors shut and not letting
people in.
Yeah.
And so obviously there are NDAs in place, and there are things that you need to kind of tidy up before hosting students, or have a section of your shop that, you know, is kind of like a no zone. But overall, I think many of us can, you know, show our shop floors and show the technology. So what I would say to that young girl is that it's not like it was years ago, and it's worth looking into. But I would also say that, you know, the victim mindset is not, you know, and not to say that women go to that, but if it's a male-dominated industry and you don't have thick skin, and the first time somebody says something that may or may not have meant anything badly about it, you're gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
You kind of have to develop your emotional intelligence, and you know, and have a little bit of, you know,
thick skin.
Exactly. Because it's, you know, walking on eggshells is not an option. I walk into boardrooms and I'm not naive to the looks. I'm not naive to the second guessing. But I don't pay any attention to it. I don't spend my energy on it. And if women are going to come into this industry, and men that have been in the industry their whole lives and paved the way for us have to walk on eggshells, educate them, obviously. But if to walk on eggshells, then are we really bringing value?
Right.
You know, it's about collaboration, it's about respect.
Yeah, it can't be just diversity for the sake of diversity.
Exactly.
Everyone has to be bringing something
to
the table. Value. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you were here.
Thank you for stalking me. I appreciate it.
That's stalking. It pays off, folks. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.